Hello and welcome back. You are listening to the WeCyberYou Unlocked podcast, and we are just absolutely thrilled to have you with us for another deep dive today.
Yeah, really glad you're here.
And today, we are taking a look at something that, at first glance, it sounds like it belongs in a dusty archive next to a stack of floppy disks.
Or a Sony Walkman, maybe?
Right. But as it turns out, it is actually the invisible force field around your entire digital life.
It really is. It's one of those topics that people tend to glaze over until something goes wrong, until they get that dreaded email saying their password has been compromised, and then suddenly it's the most important thing in the world.
Oh, yeah. Panic mode. We are talking about the Privacy Act, 1988. And before you check the calendar and ask, why are we talking about 1988? Just wait.
Stick with us.
Because as we are going to find out from our source material today, which comes directly from WeCyber, this isn't just a history lesson. This is the actual rule book for how your personal existence is handled in the digital age in Australia.
It is the rule book. And to give credit where it's due, all the insights we're unpacking today are sourced entirely from WeCyberYou. Our mission here is to really decode Australia's main privacy law. It's about understanding who controls your data, how it is protected, and maybe most importantly, what happens when things go completely sideways.
So let's unpack this date first. 1988. Think about that year. The internet as we know it, it didn't even exist.
No.
We barely had mobile phones. They were basically bricks. Yet WeCyberYou describes this act as the foundation for protecting individuals in an increasingly digital world. That feels like a bit of a contradiction, doesn't it? How can a law written when clouds were just weather phenomena possibly handle AI and data mining?
It does feel counterintuitive, for sure.
Oh.
That is what makes this so fascinating. While the date on the tin says 1988, the legislation itself is what lawyers call technology neutral.
Technology neutral. Okay.
Right. The principles inside are about concepts that are timeless accountability, ownership, safety. It sets the legal rules for how personal information must be collected, used, stored, shared, and protected.
So the medium doesn't matter.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if you are storing that info in a metal filing cabinet in a basement or on a distributed cloud server across 3 continents, the obligation remains the same.
Okay, so it's sort of a living document. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of that, because the first thing that jumps out from the WeCyberYou notes is the scope.
Right, the scope.
The big question is, who actually has to follow these rules? Is it everyone? If I start a lemonade stand and, write down customer names in a spiral notebook, am I liable if I lose the notebook?
Well, not unless your lemonade stand is wildly successful and franchising globally.
I make good lemonade, but probably not that good.
The Act is quite specific about who it targets. First off, it applies to Australian government agencies. That's the baseline. We expect the government to handle our data responsibly. But for the private sector, there is a threshold.
The magic number.
The magic number is an annual turnover of over 3 million Australian dollars. If a private organization hits that revenue mark, they immediately fall under the Privacy Act.
Wait, hold on. 3 million. That seems, pretty high. Think about my local gym or the independent coffee shop that has a loyalty app or a boutique marketing agency. They might be making $2 million a year. They have my credit card, my address, maybe even my health info if it's a gym.
Yeah.
Are you saying they could just do whatever they want with my data because they haven't hit that $3 million jackpot?
That is a very common criticism, and it's a valid fear to have. The logic behind the exemption is to not overburden really small businesses like the local corner store with massive compliance costs and legal teams.
Okay, that.
However, it's not a free-for-all. And
Well-
here's where it gets really interesting in the WeCyberYou analysis. There are exceptions to the exception.
Okay. So there are traps for the smaller players.
Big traps. Certain small organizations must comply, regardless of how much money they make. The most critical one is health service providers.
So doctors, dentists.
Absolutely. But also physios, therapists, even a small gym, if they are collecting specific health records. Think about the sensitivity there.
Right.
If you have a one-person psychology practice, you might only make $100,000 a year. But the notes you take on your patients are incredibly sensitive. The risk to the individual, if that leaks, is just catastrophic. So the law says, I don't care how small you are, you protect that data.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
You really don't want your medical history floating around just because your doctor runs a small clinic. But I saw another exception in the WeCyberYou material that sounded a bit more corporate. Businesses that trade in personal data.
Yes. This is essentially the data broker clause. If your business model is buying and selling personal information, you do not get a pass just because you're a startup. If you are commodifying people's identities, selling lists of emails, marketing profiles, demographic data, the law says you are in the danger zone. You have to play by the rules.
Which is very reassuring. It feels like they tried to close the obvious loopholes. But what about companies not in Australia? We live in a global world now. I buy stuff from U.S. sites. I use European apps. If a company is based in, say, California, do they care about the Australian Privacy Act 1988?
They absolutely have to. The Act has an extraterritorial reach. It applies to overseas organizations if they are carrying on business in Australia and handling Australians' personal information.
Wow. Okay. So it's a wide net.
It's designed to be. The goal is to catch the entities that hold the most power over our information, regardless of where their headquarters might physically be.
So we've got the who sorted. Now let's talk about the what. When we say personal information, I think most of us naturally picture the basics. Name, address, date of birth.
The standard stuff.
The stuff you'd find on a driver's license. But looking at the WeCyberYou breakdown, the definition seems way more fluid than that.
It is, and this is crucial for you as the learner to really understand. The definition absolutely covers the standard ID stuff you mentioned. Names, emails, phone numbers. But it expands to include online identifiers.
This is the digital shift we mentioned earlier.
It is. We are talking about things like IP addresses and device IDs.
See, that is wild to me. An IP address. That feels so technical, so removed from me as a person. I mean, my IP address changes, doesn't it? How is that personal information?
Think of it like the mosaic effect. On its own, an IP address might just look like a random string of numbers. But if I combine that IP address with your browsing history, your device ID, and the time of day you are active,
you can paint a picture.
A startlingly accurate picture of your life. I can probably figure out where you live, where you work, and what you're interested in. The Act defines personal information as any data that can reasonably identify a person.
Reasonably identified. That's a really powerful phrase. It sounds like a catch-all.
It acts as the safety valve. It means that as technology changes, we don't necessarily need to rewrite the whole law. If a new technology comes out tomorrow that allows someone to identify you by your walking gait, which is a real thing in development, by the way, or your typing pattern, that could theoretically fall under this exact definition.
Speaking of things like walking gaits, the notes also mention sensitive data. Is that just a fancy legal word for, embarrassing stuff?
It's a specific legal category with much higher protections. This includes financial data, health records, education history, religious beliefs, political opinions, and biometric data.
Wow, that's broad.
And these require even higher standards of protection because the harm caused by leaking them is significantly worse. If your email leaks, you get spam. If your biometric data leaks your fingerprint or face map, you can't just change that. You can't reset your face like a password.
That's a terrifying thought. It really highlights that this isn't just about stopping annoying spam emails. It's about protecting your actual identity.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, defining personal information, this broadly gives individuals real control. It says that your digital exhaust and querying, the data you leave behind just by existing online, belongs to you. Or at least it needs to be treated with respect.
Okay, so we know who is watching and we know what they're watching. Now let's talk about the rules of the road. The WeCyberYou text mentions the 13 Australian Privacy Principles, or APPs.
The APPs, think of them as the 10 Commandments of data handling plus 3.
The 13 Commandments. Now, I definitely don't want to turn this into a dry law lecture, so we aren't going to read the raw legal text. But the source material groups them into 5 key themes that I think we really need to dig into, because these are the things that affect you and me every single day.
Yes, these themes really show the underlying philosophy behind the law. The first one is transparency.
Which means?
It means organizations must be completely open about their data practices. They can't just harvest your data in the dark. You know those privacy policies you constantly scroll past just to click? I agree.
The ones that are 50 pages long and written in tiny font.
The very same. Even though nobody reads them, the organization is legally required to have them. They have to tell you what they're actually doing. If they are taking your data and sending it to a server in a country with 0 privacy laws, they have to declare that.
Okay, so transparency is key. Next up is necessity. And this is one that I feel like I see violated all the time. Collect only what is necessary.
This is a huge one. It's the principle of data minimization. Let's take a real-world scenario. You sign up for a loyalty card at a coffee shop. They ask for your name and email. That's fine. Then they ask for your date of birth, your home address, and your gender.
Just to get a free cappuccino after 10 stamps.
Right. Does the coffee shop actually need your home address to punch a digital card? No. So under the necessity principle, they shouldn't be collecting it at all. The law says you can't just hoover up everything just in case it's useful for marketing later. You have to have a legitimate reason for it right now.
Which naturally leads right into the third theme, lawful purpose.
Right. You can only use data for the lawful and stated purpose. You can't collect my phone number for security verification like two-factor authentication, and then quietly hand that number over to the marketing department to cold call me about insurance.
Oh, that is the classic bait and switch.
And it is completely illegal under the APPs. The law is there to say, if you collected it for X, you use it for X. Unless you get fresh, explicit consent.
Then we have number 4, which is a really big one for the WeCyberYou audience. Protection. This seems obvious, but what does it actually mean, legally speaking?
It means the security obligation is active, not passive. It is not enough to just promise to be good. You have to actually lock the doors. The Act requires organizations to take reasonable steps to protect information from misuse, interference, loss, and unauthorized access, like cyber attacks.
Reasonable steps sounds a bit vague, though. If a company has a turnover of $5 million and they store my credit card numbers on a basic spreadsheet called creditcards.xls on a public server,
then they are breaking the law. Reasonable scales with the actual risk. If you are a massive bank, reasonable means military-grade encryption and constant auditing. If you are a small online retailer, it might mean decent firewalls and secure rotated passwords. But doing nothing, that is never considered reasonable.
And finally, the 5th theme, access and correction.
This is all about empowerment. You have the right to ask an organization, what do you know about me? And they have to show you. And more importantly, if they have it wrong, if they have a debt recorded against you that isn't actually yours or a medical diagnosis that is completely incorrect, you have the legal right to force them to fix it.
That is crucial because bad data can ruin your credit score, your job prospects, all sorts of real-world things.
It really can. These principles, when you look at them together, are designed to force organizations to be responsible stewards. They are not just hoarders of data, they are temporary custodians of your property.
Responsible stewards. I like that phrasing. But let's be real here for a second. Stewardship fails. We see it every single week in the news. A massive company gets hacked, and millions of records are just out there. What does the Privacy Act of 1988 say about the absolute worst-case scenario?
Well, this brings us to the Notifiable Data Breaches Scheme, or NDB. This was a major addition to the Act a few years ago.
The NDB. Sounds serious.
It is. Before this scheme, if a company got hacked, they often just kept quiet. They'd patch the hole and just hope nobody noticed. Under the NDB scheme, they can't sweep it under the rug anymore. If a breach happens, they must notify the individuals affected and the regulator.
Is that for every single little glitch, though? If an intern accidentally sends an internal lunch newsletter to the wrong email list, does that trigger a national alert?
No, and that's a really important distinction. We don't want notification fatigue where people get an email every single day about minor, harmless issues. The criteria is serious harm.
Serious harm? That feels subjective again. What does that actually look like in practice?
It implies a reasonable risk of financial loss, reputational damage, or threats to physical safety. Let's compare two scenarios. Scenario A, a list of customer names and their favorite ice cream flavors is leaked. Is that embarrassing for the company? Maybe. Is it serious harm to the customer? Probably not.
Unless you're really ashamed of loving rum and raisin.
True. But let's look at scenario B. A list of names, home addresses, and details of domestic violence counseling sessions is leaked. That is serious harm. That puts actual lives at risk. Or financial data that allows immediate identity theft. That is serious harm. If the breach hits that threshold, the sirens absolutely have to go off.
And if they fail to protect the data or fail to notify us, what is the stick they get hit with?
The stick can be incredibly heavy. We are talking about severe consequences. There can be very large fines for serious or repeated breaches. And we're seeing the appetite for handing out these fines growing globally.
It feels like the regulators are finally starting to bare their teeth.
They definitely are. And beyond the fines, there is enforcement action. The regulator can step in and legally force a company to change its practices, audit their internal systems, and monitor them for years. But frankly, there is one penalty that the Act doesn't mandate but always happens anyway: reputational damage.
That's the real killer for a business, isn't it?
It is. If you are a bank or a health provider and you lose everyone's personal data, the trust just evaporates. Customers leave. Stock prices drop. For many businesses, the trust deficit costs way more than the government fine ever could.
So we have the rules, we have the penalties, but I want to bring this back to our listener right now. Why should they care about this today? I mean, 1988 was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Why is this deep dive relevant to someone sitting here in the modern digital age?
It matters because of where we are heading. If you look at the specific areas WeCyberYou highlights as being critical for responsible data treatment, they are the absolute pillars of modern life. Social media and online platforms. Schools and education, just think about how much student data is online now. Healthcare, financial services.
And the WeCyberYou text specifically mentions future tech.
Yes, and this is where the rubber really meets the road. We are talking about AI, cloud computing, and digital marketing.
Let's talk about AI for a second, because AI basically eats data. That's its food.
It does. AI needs massive, massive data sets to learn and function. And where does that data come from? Often it comes from scraping the internet. It comes from your user interactions. Without the Privacy Act, an AR company could theoretically harvest every interaction you've ever had online to train a bot that perfectly mimics you.
That is straight up Black Mirror territory.
It is. But the Privacy Act acts as a vital guardrail. It says, even if you are using a supercomputer from the future, you still need a lawful purpose. You still need to be transparent. You still need to actually protect that data.
And cloud computing.
Cloud computing means our data is physically located in massive server farms we will never see, managed by people we will never meet. The Privacy Act is the legal tether that ensures that even though your data is floating out in the cloud, the company putting it there is still completely responsible for it.
So without this act?
Without this act, it's the Wild West. The Privacy Act, 1988, ensures that as we move into this world of artificial intelligence and ubiquitous cloud storage, there is a strong legal framework holding these powerful entities accountable. It ensures that even as the tech gets more complex, the basic human right to privacy remains intact.
It's kind of like the brakes on a car. The car might be electric now, self-driving, and faster than ever, but you still need the brakes to work, or the speed just doesn't matter.
That is a fantastic analogy. It connects the dots perfectly. The technology completely changes, but the core need for safety and control does not.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's just do a quick recap of what we've covered in this deep dive.
We've seen that the Privacy Act 1988 is Australia's main privacy law. It applies to government agencies and private organizations with a turnover over $3 million, but with those critical traps for health providers and data traders that ensure the most sensitive data is always covered.
We learned that personal information isn't just your name, it's your IP address, your device ID, and your biometrics. It's the whole digital mosaic of you.
We walked through the 13 APPs, the commandments of transparency, necessity, and protection. We discussed how necessity stops the local coffee shop from needing your medical history. And we discussed the notifiable data breaches scheme, which ensures you are told if your data is compromised and you are at risk of serious harm.
And finally, we talk about why this matters right now in the age of AI and the cloud. It is basically the shield we have against the misuse of our digital selves.
And that actually leads me to a final thought for our listeners to mull over. We often feel totally helpless in the digital world, like we are just users generating free content for big companies. We feel like the product. But this act exists to flip that script. It exists to give you control. It turns users back into individuals. It forces organizations to remember that this data isn't just raw material for their algorithms. It is a piece of a human life. And that is always worth protecting.
That is a really powerful thought to end on. You are not just a data point. You are a person, and the law recognizes that.
It really does.
Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. We hope you feel a little more empowered, maybe a little more skeptical of those giant privacy policies, and definitely more informed about your rights.
Absolutely.
And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown and want to keep getting smarter about your digital world, remember this is the WeCyberYou Online podcast. Please make sure to follow the channel wherever you are listening right now. We have a lot more great stuff coming down the pipeline.
And for more educational cybersecurity content like this, and to really dive deeper into these topics with guides and articles, direct your browser to WeCyberYou.com. There is an absolute treasure trove of information there that goes even further than we could today.
Definitely check it out, WeCyberYou.com. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next deep dive.
Stay safe out there.